I finished it and it's absolutely beautiful. This ending was everything that I could have wanted. Hello beautiful bookworms, my name is Katarina and welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be doing a review for a manga series that I have finally finished. It's been a long time and I've been wanting to talk to you about this series since it's now one of the most known series, and it even has an animation adaptation, which I haven't seen yet, but I really want to now that I have finished reading and I won't be spoiled for anything to see the difference between them. But I wanted to talk about the manga and highly advise you to just pick it up because it's worth it. So the manga that I'm talking about is The Promised Neverland, and this is the final volume, volume 20 of The Promised Neverland. This is by Posuke de Misu and Kayu Shirai, which I finally can say these names correctly. So Kayu Shirai is the writer of the story and Posuke de Misu is the artist of this story, if I'm saying this correctly. Yes, I am. And wow, I mean, you all know, if you've been in this channel for a while now, you've seen me doing wrap-ups of these volumes whenever they came in. You've seen me talk about The Promised Neverland, and you know that I have a strange relationship with Promised Neverland. First of all, this is a dystopian series, and I do have strange relationships with dystopians, even though I love 1984 by George Orwell, which is the dystopian, a lot of people say, and I do like The Hunger Games, for instance, by Suzanne Collins, which is also a dystopia. I don't really enjoy dystopias in general. However, in manga series, I do find that I enjoy dystopias more than in actual book formats. I think that the visualization of how the world is, the development of the characters, and the fight for something better is completely different than in other novels. And for that reason, I think that even if you don't like dystopian novels, you should give a chance to dystopian manga series. And also to animations, but mostly to manga series, because the dystopian manga series that are out there and that are praised, they are praised for a reason. And second of all, you've known that even though I loved the start of this series, there were some volumes in between that I have said that felt a little bit more like 3 stars. It never went down that road, so it was always consistently fine and enjoyable, to say the least, but there were parts of it that dragged a little bit. The pacing wasn't always fast-paced, and the characters weren't always incredibly developed, but the ending pays off, and I do believe that these last volumes were great. The first ones were also awesome, and if you have the time and you want and you can get past to the middle of it, which is the part where it lags a little bit more, you will find it a very nice developed series with very nice developed characters, a nice pacing, and a really beautiful story. So The Promised Neverland is comprised, as you probably have seen since I've told you that the 20th is the last one, 20 volumes. This one is the first volume of The Promised Neverland, which is the most recognizable cover of the series because, of course, everyone that buys it beginning with the first one. Wow, I am so eloquent today. And so because of that is one of the most recognizable, and I think that if you couldn't recognize it through these characters, you would recognize it through this. So yeah. But for the purposes of this video, I will be holding up the 20th or not holding up anyone at all. So not unsimilar to other manga series, but also unsimilar to other manga series sometimes, this manga series is not comprised by arcs. What I mean by this is that there isn't one specific thing that begins and ends in some volumes and then other plot points are picked up in other volumes. So The Promised Neverland is a constant and current and completely from one point to the other series. So you cannot start in the middle of the series, or I mean you can, but it wouldn't be the best idea because you'd miss a lot. You can't start in the middle of the series. Obviously you shouldn't read the last one beforehand, and you should start in the first one and just go until the 20th. I would also like to say, for people that aren't very familiarized with manga and how it works, 20 volumes is not that big. Normally, shonen series, which you could say that this is a shonen but with a little bit of adult topics, these types of actiony series with younger protagonists that kind of correspond to our YA sort of series, these series are really, really big. I can tell you, for instance, Bleach is really big. You probably know it. It's about that red hair guy that can see spirits and has a big sword. Naruto is another huge manga series. It has, what, 70 something? I don't know, 60 something. It's really big. You also have Fairy Tail, for instance, which is also a very known one. It's also extremely big. It's like 59 volumes, so 20 volumes is actually not too much for a manga series. I would say that for me, the perfect length would be 12, 14 volumes, and for that, it would already be too much, because of course we don't want to invest on something that we don't know if we are going to love. But I think that Promised Neverland was actually well spaced out, was actually well done throughout the 20 volumes. It's like it was actually thought for 20 volumes, and it's enough. It just arrived here and it stopped, and it's great. And I think that if you don't mind getting into a bigger, because as I'm telling you, this is not that big, but a bigger manga series, Promised Neverland would maybe be your thing. So I can move more freely, let's just put the book down. So The Promised Neverland, for those of you that don't know, which probably isn't no one at this point in time, because the series has been around for a while now. And for a while, I mean that it came out in Japan in 2016, and the first printing in English was in December 2017, I think. And this is published by Viz Media and the Shonen Jump print side of Viz Media. This in English. And I do think this has a rating. It is rated older teen, as you can see. Please do not read this, but as you can see here, it is rated for older teens, which means that it has some topics that have trigger warnings attached to. But the series of Promised Neverland is, as I've told you, a dystopia, and it could be a very light horror, but in its core is an actual action manga series. And our protagonists are a group of children. These children were created in an orphanage, and they have this mother figure that takes care of them. They are very happy. They learn a lot in the orphanage. They are tested constantly for their knowledge, and they also play a lot. And, you know, they are incentive to make physical exercise, to learn, to know stuff, and they are just waiting to be adopted, because that's what normally kids are hoping for in an orphanage, is to live their lives outside with a nice, caring family, even though they really love each other and they love their mother figure and they could be there forever, they wouldn't mind. And one day, when one of the kids is finally picked up to go to a new home, she forgets a toy that she used to have with her. And so our main characters, they go and try to reach her before she gets adopted and give her the toy back. And then they find out that that poor child is dead, and that they are actually being harvested by demons that exist in that world, and that they are supposed to function as living food for those demons and not actually be adopted. So those orphanages are farms, and they are just food, basically, which is terrible. It's extremely sad to discover, and it's where the horror part of this comes on, because you have death, of course, involved in this world. However, it is not that gory, so if you are an initiate in the horror genre and you mind gore, you can still read this, because the dystopian part of this and the action part of this is bigger than the horror parts of this. However, of course, I have to tell you that the demons are a bit ugly and creepy, and there is blood, and there's obviously character deaths, because we are dealing with a very complicated situation. So if you don't want that, you should not read this. So our main characters decide that they love their family and they don't want their family, or themselves of course, to be eaten by these demons and to be created and sold and shipped to these demons. And so they decide that they are going to run away. And what happens after this is sort of a cat and mouse game between all of the children and the mother that is taking care of them, that apparently has something to do with the demons, and all of the demons that exist and want to eat them. So they just want to find a place where they can live and be happy and be a family and not be food and not be killed, of course. And at the same time, the demons really want to eat them because they are what they eat. And of course, they chase them, which is pretty normal. So it's kind of like to see who is the most intelligent of these two factions and who is going to win in the end. Of course, as I'm saying that this is a dystopian, you can see that there's already, this world is not exactly the world that we live in, which, I mean, of course, because there are no demons eating children that we know of in this world. So it's not, of course, the actual world, but some references will tell you that it's actually planet Earth, and it's actually a dystopian world of this. So in order to not spoil you anymore, I'm not going to tell you any more of the plot. If this didn't intrigue you, then this is not for you, because as I've told you, there are no arcs, there are no different plot points of this. This is just the children finding a way to survive, and the ending that this will reach, which I'm not going to tell you, is or they win or they die. So it's very basic front plot point, and it's the thing that you get is the thing that you see is the thing that you get, basically. It's from the first one to the 20th, it's this. Period. And if you don't want to read about this, then this is not the series for you. If you do want to read this, however, this is the perfect series for you, because, not only because of the subject matter, but this is a series that is very common in shonen, where what you're supposed to see is the developing of the main characters, the development of the secondary characters, love, friendship, and how that can help you overcome the difficulties in your life, which is pretty common in most of the younger anime manga stories, because they do give a plot point, and a very hard plot point, to what it means to have a family that you choose, to what it means to love and protect people. And one of the special topics in this that I really enjoy throughout the entirety of the series is the plot point of empathy and of forgiveness and of understanding how the other feels, because you have two different races in here. And even though one of them is supposed to be the evil one because you're on the side of the other one, you have to understand that there's two different situations. One race supposedly only can eat humans to survive, and the other one are the humans that are being eaten. There are two conscient races. How can there be empathy and forgiveness between them? Can it? Can we work together? Can we live together? Is the world based on killing each other? Are we supposed to just destroy what we don't understand? Are we supposed to just be bad people? You know what I mean? What is bad? What is good? And I think that that's one of the most beautiful plot points and one of the most beautiful themes that are approached in the Promised Neverland, that if you like to reflect on, obviously this is a story for older teens, but it works for everyone that wants to reflect upon on these topics a bit. Not only that, but the Promised Neverland poses the question, should we work alone in order to fulfill our gains and survive? Or should we work together to reach a better common goal? Which I think it's a very appropriate theme for the way the world is today. And I'm laughing, but I don't think it's really funny. The way that we are all for ourselves in this world, we are mean to each other, we just want to gain, and we never think about the other person. Empathy is diminishing in the world today. And if you don't believe me, just go see some studies on the matter. It is true, it is happening, and it's really, really sad. Not only because we are not contacting with each other as much as we should, this pandemic also didn't help about that, but there are other reasons for that. But we can't put ourselves in other people's places, which then makes it difficult for us to understand their points of view and to reach a conversation and to actually both parts give and take from each other and just reach a negotiation. Of course, another one of the topics of the Promised Neverland has to do with food and eating and nutrition. Of course, in this case, it's demons eating children and human meat, but of course, you can also see this if you want. I don't know because I've never talked with the author of this, but you can see that as the elevated consummation of some species rather than others. So it's kind of extrapolating the fact that maybe we're eating too much meat or too much animals, and there are other things that we could put in our diet, and they also suffer. And so is it correct? Is it ethical for us to do this? Is it not? Because for the demons, they are used to eat children. So it's not like a question. It's like we are used to eat, most of us, the ones that aren't vegetarians or vegans, we are used to eat fish, meat, eggs, and all of that. So for us, it's pretty normal. Some people don't question that. And the underlying message here is, should you question that? Could you? I mean, is it that hard to question? That might be another option for you. And of course, me myself, I'm not vegetarian and I'm not vegan, so I can't be here preaching about these situations. However, we know that consuming a lot of particularly meat from other animals does bring a lot of problems, not only for the actual animals and the way they are treated, but to the environment as well, as we all know if you've been a little bit attentive to the world today. So it's not like I'm preaching here, but I mean, and I do eat meat, but I do try to actually find other things like vegetarian-based things or vegan things that I can eat some days in the week and try to, I mean, for instance, I eat lunch and I eat a protein at lunch, meat or fish or eggs or something. But then for dinner, I only eat soup and a bit of bread or cheese or something like that. Couldn't that be a way to, diminish this consumption? It's questions. Of course, this is not a preaching manga series, and these are some things that I'm extrapolating, so you don't have to be afraid of, oh my god, I'm going to read propaganda. It's not that. It doesn't have anything to do with that. But through it, if you want, with all good works of fiction, you could extrapolate something to the actual reality of what you're living in. And I think it's also nice that you don't read things and take them only as face value. It's also nice to reflect, to understand what you're reading about, and to try and bring a little bit of the things that you are learning, particularly in manga series, because I've always said that I feel like Asian authors know a little bit more of emotion and the way to display it, which is very strange, because in their works, they display it really well through music, through animation, through their novels, through everything. However, they're very to themselves and they don't display emotion themselves, which might be why they keep it for their art. I don't know. This is a very mine opinion. And I think that if you try and interpret everything that you read, that it's not nonfiction, so fiction, and take it to a reflective point in your life, you will probably know more and reflect more about the world that you live in just because you've read a work of fiction. And The Promised Neverland is really great for that, because its main themes are about empathy, friendship, courage to change the world, and actually consider if the world that you live in couldn't be changed in small ways that will actually make it better for everyone. And there's also, I don't know, it's just beautiful. And I love the relationships between the characters, the friendship, the way that they protect each other. That's what we all wanted, right? A family, friends, people to look out for us, and just that we can look out for. I don't know, I think it's a beautiful series. So in conclusion, even though there are parts that broke my heart, actually in this volume I spent the entirety of the volume sobbing. I did. I am a very sensitive person. Sometimes I cry just because things touch my heartstrings. Even though that, and I've cried in other volumes, and even though there's a lot of pain, there's also a lot of hope. And I think that that's the main theme of The Promised Neverland. If you have hope, and if you try and work for something that you think will be the best thing, together and not just by yourself and for your own needs, then you can reach a conclusion. And I think that if any of these topics sound great to you, you could pick up The Promised Neverland. It isn't that big of a deal. I've seen bigger investments, I've seen bigger series. This one, I think it's worth it. I also want to tell you, it's not my absolute favorite series of all time. I think that, as I've told you, there's a lot of problems, especially with pacing and some situations that I think maybe weren't completely needed and just drag the plot a little bit. But in the end, it's an enjoyable series. It would stand, I don't know, 3.5 possibly on its entirety, maybe even 4 if you want to go there. I don't like to rate it that much. I just like to tell you that I think it would be a good opportunity for you to read and reflect a bit and enjoy a nice adventure. So with that said, that's going to be all of my review for The Promised Neverland. I do want to see the animation. I do want to see if it's as great as the manga is. I do want to see what they do with score and what they do with color, because of course mangas don't have color. And I want to see how the ambience and everything comes together. It might be good. I don't know. If any of you has seen the animation, tell me in the comments down below. Please try not to spoil other people that haven't read this series or watched the animation. But we can comment, talk about it if you like the series or if you don't like the series. Tell me something in the comments down below. And that's going to be all for today. So happy readings to you all. Bye.